Hi, my name's Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we're looking at Bunny Kingdom, a 2 to 4 player competitive area control game where you're looking to have the most influence on the player board, and card drafting because you need to pick the right cards to allow you to establish that dominance and give yourselves missions and objectives to gain the most points. So you play as rabbit lords looking to conquer the world and please your bunny king. Imagine Planet of the Apes with wabbits, and you get to be a part of that journey. So let's see how this plays and whether this could be the next game for you. So the object of the game is for you to be the player with the most golden carrots or points at the end of 4 rounds of play. To set up the game, you need to thoroughly shuffle the main deck of cards, then each player will pick a colour and take the respective coloured bunny tokens. Now, dependent on the player count, you'll deal a certain number of cards to each player. So in this 2-player example, each player will be dealt 10 cards at the start of the game. To populate the player board, you'll need to place Strength 1 city tokens on each pre-shaded city space, and you can see what strength a city is by the number of towers found on the token. So here we also have Strength 2 and Strength 3 city tokens. You'll also need the remaining building tokens easily accessible by the side of the board, and then you're good to go. So each round is broken down into 3 phases, and this game employs simultaneous player actions, so you're all doing things at the same time. Now the first phase is called the exploration phase, and this is where you're picking or drafting cards from your hand. So at this point we're going to go through the 3 main types of cards that you'll be picking from. The first of which is territory cards, and these will have a grid reference in the top left hand corner, and what that will enable you to do when you pick them is to place a bunny in that grid reference, territory or space as it's called, in this example F5. The reason you'll do that is once you do that you then occupy that territory, and that will enable you to score points later on, which we'll come to in a moment. The second type of card are these building cards, and they're further broken down into 2 main types. The first are city cards, and these will have a number 1, 2 or 3 in the top left hand corner. And once you pick those, you're going to take a respective city token with the corresponding strength found in the top left hand corner for use in the next phase. There's a similar story with these unique resource cards that have a black background to them and denote a specific type of resource that can be found with these cardboard tokens. So similar with the city cards, you'll take the respective cardboard token and place it on the card for use in the next phase. Now the final type of card are these parchment cards, and these show a scroll in the back and act as primary objectives for you to score points at the end of the game. Now all cards except parchment cards are placed face up for everyone else to see, but parchment cards are placed face down as secret objectives that will be uncovered at the end of the game. Now we know the types of cards that we can pick from. You need to know that each turn you're going to be picking 2 cards from your hand, and once you do that, placing them down face up or face down in front of you as I've just described, you'll then pass the remaining cards to the player to your left. Now you'll rinse and repeat that process then until all 10 or 12 cards, depending on the player count, have been picked. Now it's important at this point to note as well that it's only on rounds 1 and 3 that you pass those cards to the player to your left, and on rounds 2 and 4 you'll pass round to the right. So next up is the construction phase, and this is where players are going to take the buildings that they drafted in the exploration phase and place them on the player board. So let's just use the yellow player as an example. They drafted this unique resource card and this strength 3 city card. However, each of these building type cards will generally have a requirement to be placed on a certain type of territory or space. So the yellow player can only place this unique resource token on any water space or one that produces a basic resource of fish. So here they place it on grid reference I4 because building cards can only be placed on territories that you currently occupy. Now the yellow player would also like to place this strength 3 city token, but it has to be played on an occupied mountain territory or space, and as you can see the yellow player doesn't currently occupy any of those types of territory. Now you can also draft cards like this camp card here that will enable you to build a temporary occupied territory, and you'll see the number next to the camp will denote the initiative in which each player can play a camp token. So the lower numbers go first and then the higher numbers go last. So you can place a camp token on any unoccupied territory, and that will allow you to temporarily occupy that space. And I say temporarily because on future rounds, either you or an opponent may draft a territory card with that grid reference, in this example I3, and that will enable them to overtake, pillage that territory and occupy it themselves. Now the yellow players decided to place their camp there because this is going to help them build a larger fief. Now a fief is basically just a connection of occupied territories that are adjacent to each other everywhere except diagonally. So this will encompass one large fief, and that's invariably going to help us increase the scoring in the next phase. Finally, we have the harvest phase, or if you like, the scoring phase, and this is where players will get a number of golden carrots or points equal to the strength of each of their fiefs multiplied by its wealth. Now the strength of a fief is equal to the number of spires on their city tokens, and the wealth is equal to the number of different types of basic resources found on their occupied territories. So here for the yellow player, they'll have a strength of 2 and a wealth of 3 because you have a carrot resource, a fish resource and a unique resource, giving the yellow player 6 points, and each other player will then count up their points accordingly. However, one quick note, this lava alley artwork that separates certain territories will actually split up your fief. So here, unfortunately, the pink player will have 2 separate fiefs split by this lava artwork. Now, those 3 phases are repeated over 4 rounds, and then at the end of the 4th round there's one final scoring phase where you take all of the parchments that you've collected, remember those objective cards that were placed face down in front of you, and see how many of those requirements are met. Certain treasures just give you a blank number of golden carrots or points, and others require you to meet certain criteria, for example occupying the most territories. Once all your points have then been counted up, the player with the most points is the winner. So that's how this game plays. What did I think of it? So who is this game for? Well, it's undoubtedly in the light to medium weight category, and at its heart it really is a card drafting game. So you're going to win or lose based on the choices you make when picking cards. So only really then secondarily does it become an area control game. So if you like the idea of combining those 2 mechanics in a really cutesy, pretty little package, then there's probably something here for you. Maybe you're a little bit unhinged, and in quiet moments decide to reflect and your mind wanders on what it might be like to be a rabbit lord with that lust for power, that lust for conquering the known world. So you might want to consider this if you liked Ethnos, published by Simon, or Inish, published by Matagot. Because both of those games share that combination of area control and card drafting, but they have some different bells and whistles. So in terms of gameplay, well, this is one that has many more positives than negatives on offer. And one example of that contrast would be in the pacing. Now, I've got a great deal of fondness for simultaneous player action, where you're all picking, doing things at the same time, because that makes for some fast-paced gaming. Now, sometimes player interaction suffers off the back of that, but there's enough indirect interaction, be it you stopping your opponent's expansion on the board or pillaging one of those camps to tick that social interactive box. Now on the flip side to that though then becomes the scoring phase, which is less of an issue towards the start of the game, but towards the end and in the final parchment scoring element, it really is the most belaboured part of the gameplay experience here. Now I've seen some people say that increasing the art size or the board size would help with this. Unfortunately, I think it's just an inherent issue with the way you're calculating the strength and wealth of each fief, and it's just something you have to deal with, but from my perspective was the biggest negative on offer here. Now, I alluded to at the start that it's really the card drafting that underpins this game. Or is it the area control that underpins it and the card drafting that overpins it? Either way, the card drafting pins this game in some way, and is the best example of why this is a game that's really easy to enjoy and get into, but not necessarily so easy to master. This is really pure card drafting on offer here, where each of your choices where you're picking two cards make for some meaningful decisions. You could be going for some low risk, low reward choices where you have an immediate impact on the board, or you could be picking high risk, high reward, more often than not in the form of parchments that aren't necessarily going to guarantee you points at the end of the game unless you fulfill those objectives, but do allow for the sky to be the limit in terms of the amount of points you can obtain. So in terms of the look and feel and theme of the game, well, this is a yellow product, so all joking aside, they really have ticked all the boxes you'd expect from an attractive product, and I hope that that cutesy artwork style doesn't put off more serious gamers, because a fun game plus a pretty game still equals a good game. Now, enough rabbiting. Oh my god, edit that shuttlecocks out, please, thank you. Dice versus Cards Kidding give a final score to this game of 8 out of 10. This really does give a warm, fuzzy feeling in my bones when I play it. Now, but that's it from me. I'll see you next time.